Chapter 31. The Right Way. ZhuXian lay on the ground, squinting his eyes, his tail occasionally wagging, while the little gray monkey, Zihui, lay on his bed, staring straight at the pale-faced Zhang Xiaofan with bright eyes. Zhang Xiaofan glared at it and said impatiently, "What are you looking at?" Zihui naturally couldn't speak human language to Zhang Xiaofan, but it squeaked a couple of times, looking at him with a mocking expression, showing no concern for its injured master, but rather a hint of schadenfreude. Feeling annoyed, Zhang Xiaofan waved his hand dismissively, saying, "Go away, go to the side." At that moment, footsteps approached. Before the person entered the room, Zhang Xiaofan already heard and said with a smile, "Sixth senior brother, why are you delivering meals so early today? His voice suddenly stopped as he saw Tab Bai's stout figure slowly entering through the door. Zhang Xiaofan was surprised. Over these days, so are you only allowed him to rest peacefully, and the other senior brothers, including Tialinger, had only visited him once. The rest of the time, it was only Du Bisu who brought him meals. He never expected Tia Bai to suddenly appear. He hesitated for a moment on the bed, then suddenly realized and quickly got up, ready to bow in respect. However, Tia Bai, with a heavy expression, waved his hand and said, "Forget it." Zhang Xiaofan responded and stood aside, watching Tia Bai walk over and sit at the table. He dared not even breathe heavily. Tia Bai glanced at his disciple. From his reaction just now, Zhang Xiaofan didn't seem like a talented individual. Rather, he appeared somewhat inferior and compared to ordinary people. But oddly, Tia Bai shook his head with a sigh and said, "Seventh, come and sit down." Zhang Xiaofan was surprised again. Tia Bai had always been straightforward with him. Today, however, he seemed somewhat kinder. Zhang Xiaofan found it hard to believe his ears. After waiting for a while and seeing Zhang Xiaofan still looking puzzled, Tia Bai became slightly annoyed and said, "Do I have to invite you to sit down?" His scolding carried a forceful momentum, and Zhang Xiaofan immediately felt the authority of his master. Reminiscent of the past, he obediently sat down. Observing his disciple's reaction, Tia Bai felt a bit awkward and gave him another glance. Then he sighed and shook his head, saying, "How is your health?" Zhang Xiaofan respectfully replied, "Master, after returning from the heavenly terrace peak and receiving treatment from Master and Master's wife, as well as the care from my senior brothers, I'm almost fully recovered." Tia Bai looked at him and said calmly, "It's been over a month since the 7 schools competition. It seems you're almost recovered. I have a few questions to ask you now." Zhang Xiaofan's heart sank. He vaguely felt that the thing he had been afraid of was finally happening, but faced with the reality, all he could say was, "Yes, Master, please ask." Tia Bai spoke slowly. "How did you obtain that black stick?" Zhang Xiaofan's heart skipped a beat, instinctively looking at Tia Bai. He saw Tia Bai staring back, his face still calm, but his eyes sharp, seemingly exuding a threatening aura. In that moment, countless thoughts raced through his mind. For a while, he couldn't utter a word. Tia Bai's face darkened, and he asked again in a cold tone, "Speak." Under his pressure, Zhang Xiaofan's forehead started sweating. Though he wasn't very clever, he was now even more anxious, unable to come up with a good explanation in his haste. Seeing his hesitation, Tia Bai, being a shrewd and experienced person, immediately raised his voice. "Speak." Startled by his shout, Zhang Xiaofan's sweat dripped down, his mind in chaos. He dared not hide anything anymore and roughly recounted the situation of obtaining the stick, deliberately omitting the involvement of the blood pearl. He only said that he found the black stick when he and his senior sister went to the secluded valley behind the mountain. Out of curiosity picked it up and unexpectedly felt nauseous and passed out. Before passing out, he vaguely saw the stick sucking his blood into it and integrating it into the stick. After finishing his explanation, he dared not raise his head, afraid to meet Tia Bai's gaze. Tia Bai, however, frowned and fell into deep thought. Seeing his disciple not lying, he knew that the strange abilities of such treasures were not something Zhang Xiaofan could fabricate, but these extraordinary treasures were something even he had never heard of before. If there was something similar to this black stick, it might be the blood-drinking pearl from the demonic sect 1,000 years ago. But obviously, this black stick was different from that blood-drinking pearl. Tia Bai stood up, pacing around the room with his hands behind his back. After a moment of contemplation, he turned to Zhang Xiaofan and said, "You may rise." Zhang Xiaofan murmured, stood up, but still kept his head down, standing aside. Even so, even if the artifact is an extraordinary treasure, you need to cultivate to at least the 4th level of the Taiji Profound Dao's Jade Pure Realm before you can use it. Double quotes. Zhang Xiaofan's expression changed. Tia Bai continued, "On the day of the 7 schools competition, I asked you about it. Today, I'll ask you again. Who privately taught you the technique?" Zhang Xiaofan trembled. He knew that he had gotten into big trouble because of this unknown black stick. If he were caught practicing the technique privately, the punishment awaiting him would be unimaginable. But at this moment, the image of Tialinger flashed before his eyes, her figure leading him up the mountain to cut bamboo when they were young, her gentle face by the lamp on a rainy night, and the laughter and scolding from the days at the top of the bamboo peak. Even the faint fragrance of her body in his memory seemed so vivid now. Every detail surfaced in his mind. He knelt down again, bowing heavily, but did not say a word. He lay prostrate on the ground, motionless. His slightly thin body, still recovering from the injuries, now carried a hint of resilience, yet also seemed to carry a sense of desolation. Tia Bai looked at him deeply. After a long while, he sighed deeply and said, "Get up. Follow me to the heavenly terrace peak. As for whether you'll come back alive, it depends on your fate." In the depths of the white clouds, surrounded by immortal energy, everything was calm and peaceful, like a fairyland dreamed of by people. Qingyun Mountain, Tianyin Peak, Yuking Hall. The heads of the 7 branches of Qingyun Sect are all here, their gazes fixed on the young man kneeling in the hall. ZhuXian true person looked at Zhang Xiaofan kneeling there, and in his mind, he couldn't help but recall the figures of the 2 children rescued 5 years ago. How time flies! They had grown up in the blink of an eye. He sighed softly in his heart, his gaze leaving Zhang Xiaofan, and he said to the other heads, "What do you think of what Zhang Xiaofan just said?" The crowd fell silent for a while, and then the voice of Kingsong Taoist rang out resolutely. "The words of this child cannot be trusted." Zhang Xiaofan, kneeling on the ground, trembled, but did not lift his head. ZhuXian true person frowned and asked, "Why are you so sure?" "Junior brother Kingsong,